Hey, welcome to the TVP channel, and today I'll be bringing you a Lupina game against SGD Automall variant. The Lupina does go first in this game, running to the grade 1 here, which is a top 5 for the grade 3 and the grade 2. It does hit to a Lupina here. The grade 3 Lupina does resemble Modern Phantom a lot if you guys are familiar with the card, because it does withstand the rear guards, but in this case it withstands rear guards that has a force marker on it. Very well done, Bushiroad, we know your favorite clan. So we do see the SGD actually missing the top 7 search from the Nice clone. But this is the part of Vanguard, and a 15k will be thrown here to guard for a no pass. The Bermuda does ride into the grade 2 here, which actually basically just a soul charge, but if you do have a Lupina Vanguard, you do simply soul charge 1. So now you might be wondering, why do you need a soul charge for? The soul charge is for Lupina after all, because Lupina does allow you to actually soul blast 2 to search for a unit, which we will be demonstrating in a later turn. It does use the grade 1 to actually search for another grade 2 there. Getting a draw trigger here, very powerful. So now it's to the SGT player turn. Now he does ride into the Sulaiman here, which is a very interesting card to be playing with SGT, because it does synergize well in the early game, but he does miss the top 7 search of the Sulaiman. But he does use the Alan here to actually superior core the Gucci Searcher there, hitting to SGT, discarding a Daigo here, and then continuing the aggressiveness of the 5k guards. Swinging the Gucci Searcher, which does plus 5k if you have all face down damage. In this case, he does. Swinging the Sulaiman here for the skill to actually bounce back the Gucci Searcher back to hand, and then it opening yet another heal trigger, but this time it does go off. So it's up to the Bermuda turn here. He just tried to the Lupina here, actually going for the Force 2 here. Very interesting play. And then using Lupina's skill, which is actually the Soul Blast 2 as mentioned before, looking at the top 7 and calling one unit to a circle. And that circle will gain a force marker. Now he does opt for the Gucci Searcher here from the top 7, which is a simple 13k attacker if you do have 2 units on the same column. Next, he does call the grade 2 here, which allows his Vanguard to be a critical 2 already, so don't need a force 2 there. Next, he does actually call the grade 3 Trial Deck card, which is released quite long ago. It does synergize well, very well actually, in fact, with the Lupina skill. So it does swing the grade 2 first, which is a 5k guard, unfortunately, because the SGD is only on grade 2. And given that it's marker 2, it will be a 2 critical damage. So the SGD does opt to guard it with a 20k shield, very generous, another 20k shield, and does swing the Lupina first to actually use a skill, which is the Modern Phantom, standing those rear guards that have a force marker. So do note that if you do have force markers on the grade 1s, you can actually withstand them as well, so you can actually boost these rear guards before you use Lupina's skill. Let's go for the twin drive here, hitting to a critical trigger here, pushing 2 damage to the SGD player, and because of the original crit effect change to 2, it will be a 3 damage. So both columns are pressuring the SGD player pretty hard, and hopefully the SGD will be able to retaliate. Now he does eat the 2 damage first. He does eat into some damage trigger here, which will help in the guarding. Now it is his turn. We do see an Automall right here, which is pretty interesting. Unfortunately not the SGD, but he does use the Automall skill here to actually discard 1 card from hand to search the deck for 2 grade 2. And he does actually opt to find 2 weak stand here, and the weak stand will be able to filter more into the deck to flood the board with grade 1s, preparing for the SGD turn. So we do see him actually hitting to the grade 1 here, which is released in a Daigo Trial Deck, which does help SGD only, unfortunately. And we do see him committing another weak stand here to look at the top 7. This time hitting to the Gucci Searcher. But weak stand do only gain power if it's the SGD Vanguard, So the main idea of this turn is to actually just flood the board to prepare for the SGD next turn. He does swing at the side first because the side rearguard is a pretty threatening unit if you ask me, given that it's 28k on its own. And then swing with the Ohtae here, hitting to a draw trigger, very fortunate because it will definitely help against the Lupina. And swinging with the other weak stand at the Vanguard. And a 15k shield will be thrown here to effectively guard for the turn. And we will see Lupina explode further with the marker farming. Rise to the Lupina here, getting another marker 2, putting to the back row. And using his skill once again, and do know that it's an X skill, so it's not on right skill. He should look at top 7 now, but he does have to move the Great One up, so apologies for that. Because you do want to call to a circle with no markers there, because Lupina will definitely give you a marker if the circle doesn't have a marker already on it. So we do see him actually opting for the Gucci Searcher here once again, an effective 13k boosters. Let's use the Great One skill here to actually retire it to draw the 2 cards and discarding 1, allowing him to actually cycle more to the deck, and he does fortunately call another Grade 3 trial deck card, and which will push the damage further. And as I mentioned just now, he does have the marker on the Great Ones down, so he is able to actually boost them, and Lupina will be able to stand the column instead of those 2 rearguards in the front row like the previous turn. The specific column is actually hitting for 41k because of the 28k Grade 3 and the 13k booster Grade 1. So it's a 30k guard right off the bat, and the SGD does have to guard it because it's already at 5 damage. It does show the 30k shield right here, and Lupina will be standing the whole column. Super strong card, and the Kanzen will be forced out. We do see a double blank here, unfortunately for the Bermuda player, but the trigger is not exactly needed here because the SGD is still facing pressure from those power up rearguards. A 15k guard from the side and a 30k, and the Kanzen will be forced out actually, throwing the SGD off the hand. And very unfortunate, we are not able to see SGD actually even right this turn. It does use the Ohtae skill here to actually search for 2 more Grade 2s, switching for the weak stand and the lever rod. Does use the last counterblast for the weak stand here to look at the top 7. And hitting into the E-Diff here, which is the Grade 1 promo to call an Ohtae. So as you guys can see, the synergy of the Ohtae SGD, if you happen to high roll, you are able to do a very strong Grade 2 turn, as well as mixing the resources that both decks do provide. Now we do see the Ohtae swing at the Vanguard here for a power of 41k because it does power up if you do not have any face-up damage on your side of the field. A critical trigger is seen here, but unfortunately it does get negated by the Kanzen, and it just be a 2 damage here, and the Lupina does eat it. The EDF does activate the skill here to actually push the Ohtae to the soul and bounce it back to hand. Now he does right into a 3rd Lupina here, gaining yet another Force 2 marker. But this specific marker will not actually do any impact for the game because the rearguard does not really benefit because it's behind the Vanguard. And does use the Lupina skill here to actually search the top 7. He does actually opt for the Aqua here, which is actually a slight misplay in my opinion because you do want the guaranteed 2 crit on the Lupina from the Grade 2 skill, but the thing is SGT is already on 5 damage, so it might not really matter. He does swing the Aqua here for actually 20k guard, and the SGT does hit it, and this is game. Now do check out Ohtae's Lupina deck profile, which I'll be dropping a link in the description below. Do consider subscribing and dropping a like and a comment if you enjoyed the video.